Welcome to the Morning Ping podcast, where coffee, innovation, and community kick off the day. This podcast dives into bold ideas, startup realities, and the people rethinking everyday experiences through technology and grit. Hosted by storyteller Justin Starbert, alongside Ping co-founders Jane Lowe and Rob Witten. The Morning Ping brings a distinctively New England edge to building what's next. Grab your coffee and join our hosts.
Welcome back to the Morning Ping podcast. My name is Justin Starbert, and as always, I am welcomed by, or I get to welcome Jane Lowe and Rob Witten from Ping. Guys, good morning. How are you?
Good. Good morning, Justin.
This is kind of a show, an episode that we've been talking about, well, at this point for several weeks, if not months, to discuss the real estate and, you know, what goes into decisions in and around where to put a ping pod. And you guys have been really fortunate to have a couple of really great folks, that have participated in helping you look at this. Today we have Jim Sylvia and Louis Cirignano from, local to New Hampshire. Guys, thanks for joining us this morning.
Pleasure.
Happy to be here.
This has been a lot of fun to get to know Rob and Jane, but you guys had the privilege of meeting them even before I did. Talk a little bit about what your first impressions of Ping were.
Why don't you go first, Louis, since you've known them actually longer than I have?
Yeah, for sure. Time's flown by here. I think it's been 2 or almost 3 years now. Jane and I met back at a VC conference event that was happening in Boston. It was hosted by a local bank. We were literally sitting at a fireside chat together. And I was working on the tail end of another company that we were closing down. And Jane mentioned real estate and mentioned the use of land and some capacity with drive-thrus, and my antennas flew up. And I was like, oh, I can do this. This is a question I know the answer to. So we kicked it off. I had no kind of anticipation of what it would become. And then years later, we've been hacking away at it, and it's crazy how far it's gone.
What was it like for you, Jim?
It was friends of friends of friends, I think, that ultimately connected us. My background was in the grocery world and spent a lot of time in robotics related to that. So a friend of mine that was involved in grocery automation made the connection, and then I took a trip up to Burlington to see the prototype pod as it was being built, and I was kind of blown away by the opportunity, and really since then been just picking away at trying to help move the real estate part of this program forward while Rob and Jane are doing all the hard work.
Rob, Jane, has it really been that simple?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because you get on site and you have all this, you got to start testing before you're even ready and all that sort of thing. So these guys have been through all of the churn, of getting there and, figuring everything out. So no, it's pretty awesome to be where we're at and to, have these guys along, definitely, helping us through that journey because, when you have blank spots and what you know and what you don't know, having people to fill those in is just super important. So that's what Louis and Jim have done for us is really just fill in all of our gaps and make things very smooth and also just looking out into the future, like being able to understand what those next steps are with some reasonable level of background, education, and experience to go with it.
Yeah, of all the components of our business, the real estate portion of it is probably the one where we have the biggest deficit in knowledge. And just like having Louis and Jim be our advisors is beyond invaluable because, commercial real estate is not straightforward. So there's a lot to navigate and it takes a long time. So we couldn't have done it honestly without both of them.
It's cool. Jim, talk a little bit about your background. I know you've done a lot of real estate development for grocers and large box stores. Talk a little bit about how you got into that and what got you to today.
Well, I pretty much spent my entire adult life building grocery stores and worked in markets up and down the East Coast. So for most of that time, I worked for grocery chains. Started with Stop and Shop in New England, and eventually through a bunch of different mergers and acquisitions and the like, was responsible for the real estate portfolio from Maine to Virginia for a global company called Ahold. So during that time, I spent every day, every moment of my life, working in the markets from Maine to Virginia, and got to know a lot of the real estate developers in this market. Most of the brokers have a full understanding of pretty much the market dynamics. But part of my job towards the end, particularly, was the strategy of rolling out the network. So when I saw this idea, that became sort of the primary vision that I had about, all right, once we know that this is working well and we know that we can build it at the scale that we think we can go, I think we've got an amazing opportunity to do a very strategic plan that launches out of New Hampshire and can go just about anywhere. So my background in real estate development in the grocery sector, I think, plays well into that, because I built a lot of stores. I understand zoning. I understand permitting. I understand the dynamics of shopping centers, where a lot of these ping pods should be able to go quickly and cheaply. So that's sort of where the synergies of my background, I think, can help the company as we get past these pilot phases into a really strategic and scaling phase.
That's cool. How about you, Louis? What brought you to here today?
Yeah, so I mean, I started off. I've been in real estate now for going on 8 years. It's kind of gone by quick. Not quite as long as Jim, but I started off about 8 years ago as a traditional residential agent. 3 years back, my family and I took our group private. We're a boutique residential and commercial brokerage in Winchester. My experience and my specialty is really land acquisition. So in terms of zoning and approval plays for apartment buildings, mixed use sites, been doing that for a numerous amount of years, kind of been my focus. My life is real estate with way too many side quests. So here, being involved with the Ping folks from a real estate perspective, I think most intrigues me from the data perspective, being able to see where we're able to set precedents, where we can set precedents on queuing line data and case study approvals across municipalities, across state lines, figuring out how we can get to really national approval paths to move quick with a product like this. So that's where I think my experience intermingles in the back. Jim and I come from two different worlds, because he's coming from the commercial end of things, where I've started off more in residential, but we view it from I think both sides. And my mixed use experience with opportunities where we have to fit niche small operations and first floor units and stuff has been helpful.
Yeah.
I want to add too that Jim has experience with robotics and startups, and then Louis also is an entrepreneur, had his own fintech company. So I think like these components and qualities to their backgrounds really help in our startup world.
Yeah. Well, and the interesting thing, hearing you both share the background and knowing more about Ping, is there's a lot of space that's under-monetized in a lot of those developments, and you're never going to have a parking lot full of vehicles going to Stop and Shop. There's always going to be spaces available, and Louis, to your point, there's underutilized spots in mixed use areas where it would be a really wonderful opportunity to try to fill in some gaps where otherwise you have empty space or awkward space. When you see that it only requires 120 square feet and there's no water or sewer required for hookups, from a landlord perspective, and I'll have you both answer, what does that look like from an opportunity standpoint, and what are your questions from maybe the opposite side about, that maybe we're not thinking of.
Do you want to go first on that, Jim?
Yeah, look, having in my job, in my corporate job, in my prior life, I ran a very large portfolio of over 60 million square feet of retail space. So it was a huge shopping center company that was really trapped inside of a grocery business. But when you think about all the L parcels on every shopping center in America, there's typically uses that are driven to those that are the drive-through uses, fast food, coffee, et cetera. But they're all complicated. They all need significant amounts of infrastructure. They all have significant timelines attached to them relative to entitlements and permits to get them. So when I first saw this, it's such a light touch on how you actually execute the real estate part of it, that it can be literally popped into just about anywhere, with the pod the size that it is, and taking up only 15 to 20 parking spaces. The market size is literally limitless. We're only looking for high traffic, high visibility, easy access. If we can check those boxes, there's literally millions of sites across the U.S. and beyond that this could be popped into. So when Rob first told me that we don't need water and sewer, I didn't believe him. So I had to literally understand that to fully appreciate how that is. And when I speak to people today in the industry, they don't believe me either. So that, I think there's where we have such a vast opportunity of sites. The process that I see that is going to limit us is really just building the funnel on where do we want to go and how do we want to do it. I think the retail world is pretty easy to understand and execute. Louis has some perspective on the other classes of real estate that I think we can piggyback on too. But when I think about the execution phase of this, the challenge is really going to be how do we prioritize what we want to do and where we want to do it. So that's my take on what this opportunity presents, because of its unique characteristics.
Yeah, and I think when people see like 120 square feet, it's easy to see obviously that it's a huge physical size savings opportunity compared to a traditional human operated drive-through. But I think the component of that that's most exciting is that it really allows us to have a better mutually aligned interests with the landlords too. I mean, when we're talking about these local markets, it's such a vacuum, such a lack of space within these new plaza developments and these kind of newfangled village conversions that we're seeing of malls and stuff. Every inch counts. This is expensive real estate and around these municipalities. So to be able to have fully aligned interests where we can offer a coffee drive-through product like this, great for the community, be able to offer this customer experience, while also driving increased cap rates for landlords and overall value of the properties for refinances and resales. I think everyone's interest is really aligned, which is cool, which is a cool thing, that aspect.
Yeah, one of the things you both have touched on a little bit is, what the municipalities and landowners are saying, and one of the aspects that makes Ping so popular and unique is that you have such a limited amount of cars that are going to be there at any given time. There's the geofence, and now you're able to bring that as a comparison to say a Dunkin' or a Starbucks, where it might take 10, 12, 18 months to build out properly. What is that reaction like, to both the landlords and the municipalities that are potentially looking at where that fits in a zoning code?
Yeah, since it's so unique and new, and people really don't understand it quite yet, um, we're in that phase of setting those precedents that Louis was talking about. We are. I'm very confident from preliminary conversations with a bunch of different zoning officials in different jurisdictions that they're going to fully appreciate the controls of traffic that we are able to execute on. That, historically and throughout time has been the Achilles heel of getting any kind of drive-through operation approved. So as we're able to limit those queues and prove that we're doing it, that will be open up open up the floodgates, in my opinion, for how we create a new classification across the U.S. in zoning code after zoning code after zoning code. Because we're on the leading edge of robotics, you can see this happening in other sectors too. But coffee, because it's so prevalent, will be, I think, the way that we open up those floodgates. The controls and the timing of the queues is something that a problem that everybody's been trying to solve since I've been in real estate for 40 years. And I think the ability to do that with credibility, not only from a zoning perspective and with the land use folks, but with the entire real estate community. As I said at the outset, no one really believes it, right? And I think the nightmares of morning Starbucks and Dunkin' queues, and the impacts that it has on other tenants in the shopping centers and in the traffic circulation, even out on the main roads, is something we're able to solve, and that will I believe get every town that we go to excited and be able to rubber stamp us and say, okay, let's go. This is where it belongs. I would also say the market, when we think about the coffee market, whether it's Starbucks, Dunkin', or Seven Brew, or these other companies that are already in the space, we're a fraction of the size, and we're a fraction of the cost, a small fraction. And we're so flexible and so nimble, be able to plunk the machine down in just about any configuration in any parking lot anywhere, gives us an opportunity to avoid what I would call the historic coffee wars, right? Where Starbucks and Dunkin' are beating each other up on each corner. We don't have to deal with that. We're stealth in that way. Not only
Not anymore. We're trying not to be. We're
stealth in terms of targets, right? So I think what we're going to be evaluating over the near term is what works best, right, relative to the competition.
Yeah.
Is it better to be in the adjacent parking lot? Is it better to be in between a Starbucks and a Dunkin'? Where do we want to strategically place our pods so that we're able to capture as much share as quickly as possible and then build another one? Yeah. That's the other big component. Once we get to a place where capacity becomes maybe a constraint, we just pop another one in. Starbucks, Dunkin' can't do that. Nobody in the coffee business, nobody in the franchise business world.
I'd argue Dunkin' tries to, right? That sometimes they have them like one floor and have another. But to your point, though, the capital expense that goes into it is really significant.
Yeah, it's capital and time, right? There's no issues for capital for Starbucks and Dunkin', but it's time, right? They need to, and resources to execute the permitting and the build.
Yeah,
those are we can do that faster than anybody.
Yeah, we're Lego blocks. We're coffee Lego blocks. You just stack them on top of each other and move them around. I think what Dunks has done, and what I've seen even in our local, in my local market, we have access to operate and build out ping pods in sub-markets that other drive-through coffee operators can't touch. Like, there are cities and municipalities where you just cannot get a new drive-through approved. If you want to drive through, you're buying a defunct bank branch where there's one of and everyone's fighting over it, and we can just go down in a parking lot across the street and be done. So it's access to those submarkets, getting the customer experience into these new markets, into different commuter lines where drive-through coffee and convenient pickup just couldn't exist before. It's like a whole new asset class.
Yeah. Rob, Jane, what makes it difficult to stay patient right now? Because I feel like you hear, from Jim, you hear from Louis, and they're like, you could put them everywhere. We can go from Maine to Virginia. And I've got all these, folks. And, Louis is like, hey, there's this apartment building that's, desperate for, a weird, a niche tenant. What is, where do you get your patience from as a startup to, not make a poor, bad decision?
Well, I don't think that patience is one of our virtues. Or what is it, weaknesses?
It's not one of our weaknesses.
Should it
There you
be?
go, yeah.
Yeah.
We actually have a founder friend who said, and he's like 3 times founder, but he said the years 1 to 3 are the slowest, and then 3 to 10 are a blur. And I think that's going to be true for us too. Definitely, like neither Rob nor I are like both of us are just really anticipating the growth phase of this very impatiently.
Hockey
Yeah.
sticks.
But I think, the big thing for us is making sure too that we're technically ready, right? We're able to, support these pods the way we want it to. We have to work out all of our processes. All the engineering has to be, complete, and we're still in that, kind of test phase, finding all of our corner cases, all that sort of thing. So, when I think the only bit of patience we have there is really knowing that when we scale, we want to do it well, right? And so, taking the deliberate time to go through the right process, to make sure we have the right test data, to make sure we have the right processes in place. I think that's what allows us to have a little bit of tactical patience when it comes to like being able to, deploy these things. But I agree with Jane. Patience is definitely not one of our weaknesses. Like, we are so anxious to get this thing into full production and, get all the resources we need to do all of this, properly, because we've worked on a very, kind of shoestring budget till now. We've been very scrappy, but now is the time to turn this into like a fully baked, fully developed system that has been tested. We have all the right processes behind it, and then we scale.
Yeah.
Go slow now so we can run fast later.
Exactly.
So shifting a little bit, to another element that a lot of developers or landlords or, property owners are concerned about. Maybe it doesn't get as much play as it did 5 years ago, but the element of, sustainability and ESG and, just, what your impact and footprint in the local environment is actually going to do. When you guys talk about that to, potential places or contacts that you're, sort of advocating on behalf of Ping for, what is the response? What are some of the questions? How do you put that out there where 5 years ago, 7 years ago, leading with environment, maybe open doors sometimes today, depending on the political climate you're in, it doesn't help as much, but it's still a net positive as well. What is the feedback that you're getting?
I think I consider that the icing on the cake, right? I think most municipalities, most developers, landlords, property owners are trying to, whether it's energy or just dealing with carbon emissions in the queue lines of a long line of cars. They're all aware of it. They've been dealing with it for generations, and the pendulum might have temporarily swing in different directions, town by town or region by region, but it's the icing on the cake for us. Everybody that we talk to, like I said, challenges whether how are you not doing this with a water and sewer connection, and the efficiencies of the pod just jump off the page when you're thinking about it from that dimension. They don't. It doesn't even come up in a lot of conversations. Of course, it's lower impact. So they don't even challenge it or say, well, can you make it more environmentally friendly? It's so obvious on its face that you don't have to even get into a debate over it. Now, there are some communities that make it a priority, and that, when we message this in a local zoning hearing or planning board hearing, that will be part of our lead message. But for the most part, it's icing on the cake. I think that the idea that we have a machine that solves all these other problems, and oh, by the way, you don't have to worry about water use. You don't have to worry about messing with your sanitary systems in town. And as we get better with our electricity and the solar panel and battery power gets better, our touch is going to be so light that towns are going to say, okay, we don't even have to talk about that.
Yeah. How about for you, Louis?
Yeah, I mean, it'll be more impactful in the future. I think right now we're focused on small to medium landowners, small to medium sized landowners and landlords. As we branch into the inevitable institutional side of land ownership, we're working with groups and portfolio owners that report environmental metrics to capital markets. And at that point, for fundraising and general green footprint for those larger institutions, it'll be more impactful than it is for us today. But I mean, it's a path where it'll become more important in the future, as well as regulation changes in these municipalities and stuff. So it definitely could. It works to our advantage now, and I can certainly see it working to our advantage even further in the future.
When you guys put this together, Jane, Rob, and you had the opportunity to add those elements like solar, what was the original thought behind that? We actually haven't done a deeper dive into the sustainability elements of the pod on any of our shows, maybe here and there, and if we group them together, but we've never really had a segment on that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll actually let Jane, because she's been one of the biggest voices on, the sustainability side and I'll let you go, Jane. I jumped in.
Yeah. I mean, from my perspective, with my marketing and customer experience background, we know that environmental or sustainability practices are more of a nice to have for customers than it is a must have. But from our perspective, since we are reinventing the wheel anyway, let's take a fresh look at how we can become less impactful on the environment. And as I always say, I think that business needs and advantages often translate into customer advantages and vice versa. So if we can be less impactful, that helps us from a business perspective, right? As Louis said, these landlords are more, they might be more welcoming of us because we do have less of an environmental impact and we use less energy and water and everything. Customers will appreciate it. So yeah, I think that there are a lot of benefits to being environmentally minded.
Yeah.
But then from the design perspective, being able to have the battery power and the inverter and all that sort of thing gives us super clean power for automation. Adding the solar panels, now we get some free power, so it also works out very well as a business as well, and not having to do having everything go directly into the cup, so you don't need sewer. That makes you so much more efficient, just as a business as well, right? So there's a ton of advantages to us as well as being responsible in the community.
And the power component's huge right now. I mean, when we do approvals for apartment buildings and stuff, a big question that comes up and a big challenge we have to overcome is, how do we fit all 50 electric car chargers onto the grid? What does grid expansion look like? Do we have enough municipal power to support this type of infrastructure? And as you see, not to go off on another tangent, but as you see kind of third gen plaza developments, these village conversions and stuff, I think it's a question that's getting asked. We have these parcels that once supported maybe 100,000 square feet of retail, and we're now adding another 50,000 square feet of out parcels, pad sites. Can you fit coffee drive-through in a site like that? Can you offer that customer experience and that product without taxing the grid further. And to be able to not have a 3,000 square foot building that requires three-phase power or a minimum of 400 amps, it can be huge for figuring out the power infrastructure for those approvals.
I think it's really interesting to see how all this is starting, to really come together, and where it fits in with Louis, to your point about redevelopment, Jim, to your point about, reimagining those shopping centers that, everybody's already going. And then to see your vision, Jane and Rob, to have it come together has been, really, really incredible. And I certainly appreciate all of your perspectives on the real estate side of things. So I'll give you each a closing thought. What is the one thing, Louis, that you're most excited about in the next 6, 12, 18 months for Ping?
I think I have to double back on the approval precedents that we're going to come up with here. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing on, it intrigues me because that's kind of the deciding factor in my mind on how fast we'll move. Like, we already have a very short construction path where we can build these off-site, we can drop them down, we have limited infrastructure required. But the approval path and the precedents we come up with over the next 6 to 12 months here will really nail down, are we moving 4 times faster than a coffee shop, or are we moving 12 times faster than a coffee shop? Either way, we're going to win, but we'll see how far we win by.
How about for you, Jim?
I think that is, perfectly stated. I think we are doing something brand new, and whenever somebody looks at something brand new, it's easy to criticize it and find problems with it. I think what's attracted me to Ping, as well as robotics in general over my whole life, has been that we know that the future has to have automation in it, and to be part of something that is going to solve a number of different problems and be an automated solution to a business problem that has existed forever, and is accelerate the problem of labor in retail has been a struggle, and it's getting worse. So I can see us paving the path for quite a bit of different other ideas around automation in retail. But to be part of it at this stage, my impatience is part of our regular conversations about, okay, let's go. We're ready. Real estate is not going to be our limiting factor. Once we have the machine working the way we know it will work, then it's just going to be a question of executing and strategy.
How about for Jane? How about for you and Rob? What are your thoughts and excitement in and around the real estate side of the business?
Because I'm a former data analyst, for me, it's the ton of data that we're going to get out of this. This is a brand new micro retail business model, and so everything is going to be new and interesting, like queuing times, the end-to-end customer journey time. But even just drink trends. What are people asking for? What are we selling the most of? What modifications are super popular? And then, from the retail perspective, just this whole new category that we're going to create. I think there's just a ton of data that's going to be new and very interesting.
How about for you, Rob?
Yeah, for me, it's right now we're setting up all the pieces on the board and getting ready to scale, right? These guys are putting together the playbook for how our franchise will grow very, very quickly. And so I think it's just such an exciting opportunity for automation to serve not only customers directly and make their lives better, but also to serve future owners better, right? For under $200K to be able to open a site, to under $200K of pre-opening costs. Like, that's unheard of, and being able to pay back in, just a couple of years. I think that's just so exciting for, other people like us that have some money, but a lot of motivation to be able to get out there, pick up the playbook that these guys are putting together for us. We're we're building all this momentum and just getting ready to go out there and scale quickly. And I think that this time is super exciting because it's like almost the calm before the storm, because now it's about to, go out and just go crazy. And it's just a bunch of work we have to do, but all the pieces are there, right? So it's, I think it's a super exciting time.
Yeah, I agree. All right. So, Jim, I'll start with you. Where can people find more about you, or do you want to be found?
Yeah, I have after a long career in corporate real estate and the grocery business, I'm a consultant in the space. My consulting business is creatively called JSylvia Advisory Services LLC. So if you want to reach me by email, it's Jim@JSAS-LLC. I'm not going to give out my cell phone because I promised my wife I wouldn't do that. But that's my consulting business. I'm involved in a number of other startups. I've been advising big retail. I've been advising big real estate, since I retired from my corporate job about 8 years ago. So if anybody sees this that wants to talk about Ping, you can reach me via that email. And particularly if you're one of my friends that you might have crossed paths with me in the past, it'd be good to catch up with you. So thank you for the opportunity to be on with you today.
How about for you, Louis?
Yeah, you can find, so our boutique firm is the Synergy Group. You can find just thesynergygroup.com. My email is lewis@thesynergygroup.com. I'm not responsible for that domain. You should just Google it. I will give you my cell phone because it's already public. Anyone can call or text at 781-604-5156. Happy to discuss Ping or discuss other opportunities in the land acquisition approval world. I've, on top of Ping, have taken fractional roles in kind of consulting of food and beverage over the years, and happy to help or lend even just a quick phone call to anyone who has questions about the real estate markets.
Great. And Jane, you want to plug where they can actually learn more about the investment opportunity?
We're on WeFunder right now. So it's just wefunder.com/ping, Ping.
Good deal. Well, I really appreciate all of you being on this. This is our first. We've never recorded on a Saturday morning, so this has been awesome. I appreciate you guys having your coffee and getting up and doing this. This has been great.
Yeah, it's been a blast. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
On behalf of my guests today, as always, Jane Lowe, Rob Witten, the founders of